I just saw this video featuring a black guy refreshingly destroying the slavery narrative we've been fed in the Western world from our universities, our governments, our media, and pretty much every cultural institution you can imagine.
Black people sold black people, white people just paid for it. My great-great-grandmother was sold by her father to another black man, who then sold her to who became her husband and had kids, not a white person in sight. Well, so while people are being stuck on, especially when I hear this dumbass thing as reparations for slavery, I'm like, dude, slavery was everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
There was slavery in the Arab world, in the Persian world, in the Greek world, in Europe. White, blonde, blue-eyed Polish people were slaves to Germans. White, blonde, blue-eyed Germans. So what are you talking about? Like slavery is something that only black... You guys pay too much respect to racism.
And just to add to his point, over 1 million white slaves were taken by the Arab Muslims of North Africa. And none of this is difficult information to figure out. You can just do a simple Google search about it all. However, why is it then that every prominent person in the Western world seems to constantly bang the drum about slavery as if we should hang our heads in shame?
It is the honour of my life to stand before you as Foreign Secretary, a descendant of enslaved people.
I mean, if you go back far enough, we're probably all descendants of enslaved people somewhere. And remember too, of course, that the Islamic slave trade was actually bigger than the transatlantic slave trade. But do you ever see the Muslim world grovelling to Africa and holding its head in shame over its appalling actions in the past? No, you never see that. They don't even care. More importantly, the Africans don't seem to care either. So in this video, I want to posit some theories as to why this shame seems to uniquely affect the Western world. Do let me know if I've missed anything out and your thoughts below on these. The first and most obvious place to start is the cultural dominance of America. Obviously, America's a young country and did engage in slavery not so long back. And because those people are African, America's story of slavery has been transplanted around the whole of the Western world, largely when it's inaccurate. However, there's one problem with this. I'm just about old enough to remember that a couple of decades ago, the Western world wasn't obsessed with slavery. Black people didn't seem to have this vengeance towards white people. In fact, many white people seem to have that same vengeance now towards themselves. In fact, you can see how things have changed when you look at this set of interviews taken in 1990 in Chicago. You'd never get these answers today.
What do you think of white people?
White people, they straight, you know. They just like me, you know.
Okay.
They straight, just, you know, they just stay white and we black, you know.
But you find there's a difference in the way you're treated by white people as opposed to black people?
Well, you know, they haven't treated me wrong in no kind of way.
Never?
Never. I ain't never had no static with no white person.
To me, nothing wrong with white people. I love them just like I love the blacks. And I wouldn't mind marrying one of them. And then again.
Now let's compare that with a video that was made only a couple of years ago when they asked black people, what are white people superior at?
What are white people superior at?
What exactly are white people superior at?
Insecurity, pretending,
fear, being fearful of nothing,
Being ignorant.
Blame.
letting their egos control their every move,
Privilege.
Feeling victimized,
Playing the victim.
congratulating themselves over shit that they're incompetent at or that should have already been done.
they're superior at being dicks.
What exactly are white people superior at?
Oppression, gaslighting,
lack of empathy,
intellectualizing oppression.
Did I say oppression?
They're just creatively thinking of new ways of like always staying one step ahead of other people. We get rid of slave catchers, then let's just expand the police force. Like that stuff to me is wild.
Now, you'd think given Europeans pretty much created everything in the modern world, you could say a few good things that white people are good at, you know, infrastructure, political systems, constructing oil rigs that can take oil from out of the ground miles out at sea. Yet I think we're getting quite close to the core issue here. It's a harsh reality that the European peoples, with some help from the Chinese, Japanese and some folks in the Middle East, pretty much invented everything in the modern world. And it seems that many people in Western culture feel guilty about that. This is all compounded by the fact that many people in the Western world don't really have a foundation as to who they are anymore. Go back to our grandparents' generation and they themselves knew who they were and what they were about. They had a sense of mission in the world. However, these days we don't really have a tradition and a foundation to base ourselves upon. And what that means is we've let in all sorts of crazy ideologies coming in its place. This of course started with the Marxists. They recognised their economic theories were causing a disaster in the Soviet Union, so instead turned their hands to culture, and they started to see Western culture as one big oppressive play, which in time led to people like Susan Sontag making statements like this. The white race is the cancer of human history, and that's the same Susan Sontag that all the major bookstores are pushing at the moment as there's a new collection of her essays out. Do you think the major bookstores of the UK would give pride of place to an author who said the black race is the cancer of human history? I think we know that if any author said anything like that, they would never be published ever again by anyone in the whole of the world. Now, the propagators of all this woke madness are playing a very risky game, because if you haven't noticed already, they're never going to stop and you're always going to be eternally guilty. Henceforth, it's only a matter of time before more people of European origin start actually becoming racially conscious. As I've said before on this channel, it's only really in the Western world we've tried to adopt this post-racial outlook. Most white people simply don't care about somebody's skin colour. However, if you keep telling all European origin people they're evil and responsible for every last little sin in history, it doesn't seem to me like it's going to end well. In fact, this is why we're seeing smatterings of white racial identitarianism cropping up in the online space in the past few years. While I don't think this is the wisest road to go down, it is an inevitability if the mainstream culture, especially academia, is going to keep pushing this line that white people are somehow innately toxic and evil. These are just some of my thoughts, however. Do let me know what you think down below, and do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new.